Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Halib.
I'm Sabib.
And I'm Linz.
And this is Cinema Worms Podcast. These are the longest running Oscar films nominated for Best Picture, starting with Cleopatra, 1963, Gone with the Wind, 1939, Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, The Ten Commandments, 1956, and The Brutalist, 2024. And first off today, we'll be talking about The Salt Path, which we just saw. Now, The Salt Path is a biographical drama directed by Marianne Elliott, and this is her feature directorial debut. She's previously directed some incredibly well-known theatre productions, including, for the West End, War Horse and The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, as well as others which then went on to Broadway. We don't often mention parents here, but it is worth it for this one. Marianne Elliott's mother was an actress who's played many roles, but my favourite one was Beryl in the campy TV sitcom Gimme Gimme Gimme, which is like the theme song was the famous ABBA song. And if you're of a certain age and British as I am, you probably watched that show. Now, the screenplay for this was written by Rebecca Linkovitz, who has kind of started out in theatre but has also written for film and television, including Secret Diary of a Call Girl, and she co-wrote the script for the adaptation of Disobedience with Rachel Weisz.
I've seen that.
In 2017, which featured a spitting scene that I was not ready for.
Yeah, infamous.
Infamous. It lives rent-free in my head and makes me retch a little bit at times. And so The Salt Path is based on the 2018 book by Raynor Winn, and the film follows the true story of Raynor and Mothwyn after Moth gets a diagnosis of CBD, which is a rare disease, and they decide to walk the 630-mile coastal path known as the Southwest Coast Path. We own this book, but neither of us had a chance to read it before we saw this film.
I am still actually, even after just coming out of the film, I'm even more excited to read the book. I really enjoyed this film, and it's just so funny that we'd be pairing it with the Mountainhead, because it's
It could not be more different.
They could not be more different. If the Mountainhead is just like the most cynical, depraved humanity, this is like the most authentic, lived in, just quietly heartbreaking and beautiful humanity.
It's worth mentioning here that The Salt Path has a little sticker on the front indicating that it was one of the Costa Book Awards shortlisted entries, which, had The Mountainhead been a book, I do not think it would have achieved. I don't think the judges for the Costa Book Award would have been into it in some way.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll see when we talk about The Mountainhead, I liked it. You not so much. Like, actually enjoyed this. This was like, it was very moving, very just heartbreaking, like I said, seeing people like suddenly lose their, because in the beginning of the film they're like losing their house and sort of just like made homeless, just like being completely unmoored, dealing with this chronic degenerative illness. And how do they turn to nature? And the elements, as you said, you love a book about the elements. I do love
a book and a movie about the elements. Now, the actors, I mean, good God, you couldn't have had better casting for this. So Raynor is played by the fantastic Gillian Anderson, and Moth is played by the effervescent Jason Isaacs, fresh off of his White Lotus fame. Quite a different elemental scene for him there.
Much more likable.
Yes. It was really raw. It was quite realistic. That nobody seemed to be wearing any makeup. I feel like I saw every single pore on Gillian Anderson's face, and my God, were they all beautiful pores.
Yeah.
The woman is stunning.
She still looked beautiful.
Even like half drowned and sunburned most of the time, and I was like, I wish I looked even half that good on a regular day. Just powerhouse performances, but not like overly done. It was quite subtle. What did you think about that?
I agree. Yeah, the performances, because it's actually, they're so lived in and authentic that it doesn't, you feel like you're watching real people, like you're completely with them on this journey. And I can see, my parents love a true story. They're like, True story.
I love
true story. Play a movie with a true story.
I love based on true events.
Yeah.
I mean, not like the Exorcist film that was recently released that was based on true events,
Yeah.
but a really, really, really
actually
true.
Yeah. Like emotionally vivid, and yeah, it's so we're talking about performances. I agree that they're just quietly vibrant.
The thing about a film like this that is based on true story and it draws from a memoir, sometimes those films can be a bit overdone, right? Like they might be a bit melodramatic, or they might rely too much on certain things or certain events or like the score. I didn't feel that was done here. I felt that it was really subtle. It was just a really, I mean, I don't even know if heartwarming is the right word, but I certainly felt uplifted by it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's one of those films that I'm like, I would watch this again, even though I know all the beats, even though I know what happens, because there is something really inspiring about watching these people who have been knocked down repeatedly just get back up and keep walking.
Absolutely. It's such a well-told story that it's like true. So I wonder how they sort of arranged the events of the actual walk. There's the way it's depicted. The tension remains, right? Even though it feels like random things are just happening and bad luck and strange and funny and sad occurrences, but you are really invested in their journey. Yeah. So I'm really glad we went and saw this because it was your idea.
I frequently have them.
Yeah. And since you were talking about the director, what do you think of the direction?
Oh, I liked it as well. Again, like pulled back, allowed these actors to, bring the life to the performances. You don't really need to direct Anderson and Isaacs that much. I mean, a lot of the other stuff I was like, I was watching the camera work and the lighting and watching how everything had moved around. But yeah, you're working with very seasoned performers. You can really rely on them to hold up their end of it, and you can get on and focus with the landscape was arguably the third main character here.
Yeah, agreed.
There is so much. It is obviously, it's in, even when they're not in it, it is outside pressing inwards trying to get back to them, and they are trying to get back to it in some way, in a way that just felt really yearning and beautiful, and I thought Marianne Elliott did that wonderfully. I can't wait to see what she does next. I'm very excited.
Yes, and I have to say this must have been a very physically challenging movie for them to make.
Quite a lot of wild sea swimming, which is not warm at the best of times.
It was,
So we recommend going to see The Salt Path.
So we're going to be talking about Mountainhead, which is a film that came out today on HBO Max. This is the first film written and directed by Jesse Armstrong of Succession fame, and it follows four one of them almost billionaire tech tycoons as they gather for their, let's just say annual, it seems like semi-regular boys weekend where they play poker and they don't talk about business and how
they don't play poker. This is not a Molly's Game thing. I was misled.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to, right? And just be like super rich in the poorest one's massive mansion lodge in the mountains, snowy mountains. But there's basically this background drama associated with the richest one's social media company and deepfakes, which have wreaked havoc across the world and sown chaos and political strife everywhere. So we have Venn, played by Corey Michael Smith. He's the richest one of them in the Elon Musk parallel. He owns the social media app Tran, and they just came out with this deepfake technology that is so realistic that you can't differentiate between it and real videos. And it's basically been unfiltered, released into the public, and then they did some upgrades right as the film is starting that makes it even more available. And it's even as he's arriving at his friend's lodge, he's seeing whispers of chaos across the world sown by these deepfakes. Then you have Jason Schwartzman, who plays Hugo Van something. I don't have his full name here, Volts. And he's the poor one because he only has $500 million. And he's the one who built this huge lodge and is hosting them.
They called him Soup for Soup Kitchen because he's the only one who isn't a billionaire.
Yeah, and he's like real sad about that. And he's invited them to hang out, and he's schmoozing to his friends because they're all way richer than him and more successful. Apologies for our cat, Fitzwilliam Darcy. So we have Jason Schwartzman's sad, pathetic, puppyish one who only has $500 million. It doesn't have a bill. And
A B-nut, as he calls it.
A B-nut. I was like, what the heck are you talking about?
Making you hate him even more with this phrase.
And he's invited his friends over, because they're rich and even more rich than him and powerful, and he wants to hang out with his bros, but he also kind of wants them to invest $1 billion in his lifestyle app, not a meditation app. And then we have Steve Carell, who plays Randy, and he is a sort of like well-established, also billionaire who has lots of influence, and later on in the film realize he's connected in Washington in the military, but he also has cancer that appears to be progressing, incurable, and he might live 5 or 10 plus years, but he's staring down the barrel of his mortality. And it's making him really angry and in denial. Mm-hmm. And he's decided he wants to figure out a way to upload his brain to the cloud and is hoping this technology comes along quickly, which is related to the plot. Then we have Rami Youssef rounding out the quartet, who plays Jeff. And he's, I guess, like the quote-unquote not nice. No, he's not nice. He's very mean, but he like most moral one, which is not saying much. And he has a company that branched off from Ven's company that has a super efficient AI that can tell the difference between deepfakes and not deepfakes. So as the film is progressing, you're seeing that Ven is getting in some deep shit because his social media company, Tran, is destabilizing the entire world. Mayors are getting assassinated. Massacres are happening because of deep fakes and fake news. And at first he kind of just wants his technology to be unleashed, right? Like he believes like he is bringing something great to the world. But then he's kind of hoping Rami Youssef's Jeff will give him that AI filter to help, make him seem more palatable to the board and, reel in this deepfake technology. So as we go along with the film, we're seeing sort of this banter continue between the friends, a satire of their absurd psychopathic richness, and as they're hiding out in their lodge as the world falls apart, they're exchanging zingers, and we turn later to some darker elements. It becomes an absurdist black comedy.
So, I didn't actually hear you when you first said we're going to watch the Mountainhead. I thought there was a space between Mountain and Head. So I was excited because I thought this was going to be like an Everest thing, or how I like a climbing film. And it was not like that at all. So I went in completely blind. I didn't know who was in it. I didn't know what was happening. I'm so face blind that I spent the whole time thinking, this guy looks just like Jason Schwartzman. It's so weird. And it obviously was. I don't know why. I was like, maybe I haven't seen him in anything for a while. So, oh Lord, the Mountainhead. Just because I knew what the film was doing doesn't mean I was any less annoyed by it. There were several very, very quotable lines, including, I'm very excited about all of the atrocities, and labelling Earth as a solid starter planet. It wants to be insanely quick-witted, but the hare doesn't always beat the tortoise in terms of comedy for me. We're not really given much time to eye twitch at each new horrible catastrophe or each every second apathetic, quippy, pseudo-intellectual reaction from these awful tech bros. It wasn't unfunny, but it did veer over the line for me several times into trying far too hard. When you deconstruct dialogue this much and you distill it down to its absolute barest frat bro, Kantian, Muskian essentials, you end up with a plate of sad Aurelian sludge. And I know that is the point. They're always talking, but they're not actually saying much. They're puffed up with their own capabilities and their perceived self-importance, but it becomes exhausting at times to listen to and to parse through. I wanted to put my fingers in my own eyeballs and swirl them around. And underneath, there isn't actually a lot going on. It's a really interesting premise, but we don't ever really do anything with it. And because they are such awful little husks, all four of them, even Jeff, we don't really get a chance to grasp whatever oozes in place of their hearts, nor do we really have a reason to care when the tensions boil over and their relationships start to fracture. Now, as you know, I love a closed room, one building film or series or whatever. And I was like, as soon as I clocked what was actually happening, and it wasn't a mountain film, still disappointed about that. I was like, okay, I'm into it. Like, let's see what happens here. And I just was quite excited when it was done. It didn't feel like I knew it was supposed to be some sort of successor. Say that 5 times fast, but I just no, not for me.
I enjoyed the quippiness and absolute, both nihilistic and disturbing and satirical, fast-paced, endless sort of rolling, abbreviated dialogue of this. It's almost like if Roman Roy were, and the way he sort of speaks, this is like he's the most guilty party in Succession of like abbreviating things to an obnoxious degree. So there was a lot of that.
That is true, but the thing about Succession is at least you had time with them. You know, it's a show, and they were fully fledged people. They had, their relationships, they had families, they had wants and dreams. I don't really know that these characters felt like that to me because we didn't have time with them. They felt pretty flat.
Paced style is maybe hard to sort of, you're completely thrown in and it's like doesn't stop moving till the very end. And in terms of the characterization, yeah, you don't get time to sit with the characters as much, but the performances were so brilliant. I felt like, especially, as things are getting darker, even darker in that second half, that I do get a sense of just the depths of the ruthlessness of these characters and trying to capture, right, this terrifying moment in time and in history, and the absolute disturbed underbelly of technocrats and capitalism and ruthless, self-interested, powerful men who are pulling the strings on the world. So I think, of course, you can sort of see some difficulty like accessing or like holding on or being invested, like worked for me personally. It captures some of the despair in a hilarious way for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always need to be invested in anything. I don't need to be attached to a character. I don't need to even like them. I like hating a character. There just wasn't anything to hold on to for me. And I think when you get to the point where they are trying to, I think beforehand you mentioned The Big Short, and it was trying to be The Big Short, but it's not really saying much of interest. And even though the atrocities are happening, we get these glimpses of them. We are still everything is quite vague, the technology is vague, the atrocities are quite vague, and we're still only focusing on these tech bros. So yeah, for me it just felt kind of empty. I was kind of excited about it and I hoped that it would be something better than it was. It is a pretty cool premise, but it just did not work.